In this video, we're going to be talking about some WWE announcements, free agent news, and a whole bunch more. So if you guys want more videos like this, don't forget to click subscribe. Now, I want to kick things off today talking about some WWE announcements, and there's a couple of them. Over the weekend, WWE did confirm the return of Backlash for 2026, but it's not happening in Italy, it's not happening in Japan, and it's not happening in the long-rumored Mexico. Now, that is obviously very interesting because we've heard about WWE going international with Backlash. We've even heard rumors that Backlash would be in Puerto Rico. That's not the case because WWE did confirm over the weekend that Backlash will be taking place from Tampa Bay, Florida. Now, that is huge because that means the international pay-per-views that WWE was rumored to be doing will more than likely be Crown Jewel or something else. Now, WWE announced this over the weekend. Backlash will be taking place on May 9th. Pre-sale access begins February 19th, which is a Thursday. That will be at 10 a.m. Eastern. Triple H obviously announced this, with WWE being in Saudi Arabia for Royal Rumble. Backlash will be the first pay-per-view, PLE, after WWE WrestleMania 42, which is taking place in Las Vegas. And that's cool. Now, for me personally, I don't really care that it's taking place in Tampa. Yeah, I like the idea of them going back to Puerto Rico. I like the idea of them going to Italy. I like the idea of them going to Mexico. But I have a very strong feeling that this year, WWE, wherever they do Crown Jewel, will likely be another international pay-per-view. And then maybe WWE will do something else in regards to other international PLEs. Like we've been told that WWE is going to Italy. Now, which pay-per-view will that be? Maybe it'll be Bad Blood. I don't know. I really don't know what WWE's plan is there, but I'm okay with this. I don't really have a problem with it. It is what it is. Tampa, I'm sure there'll be a great crowd. I'm sure Tampa will, sell tickets. So that's fine. Whatever. Not a big deal. Another announcement that WWE made, which was today, is that T-Mobile Arena will host Raw and SmackDown during WrestleMania 42 weekend. So obviously, as you guys know, in years past, WrestleMania weekend's a big deal. WWE brings all these shows out to the same cities surrounding the WrestleMania event. They do it with Raw and SmackDown and NXT and the Hall of Fame and whatever else they plan on doing. Well, now WWE has officially confirmed in partnership with the Las Vegas Convention and Visitors Authority that WWE Raw and SmackDown will both be taking place that weekend. So Friday, April 17th, you could go to Friday Night SmackDown at T-Mobile Arena. Monday, April 20th, Monday Night Raw will take place at T-Mobile Arena as well. Now, in this announcement, though, there is no mention of NXT Stand and Deliver. So we'll have to see what might be the play for that. Obviously, with WWE going to WrestleMania weekend this year, with them going to Las Vegas, it's probably the last WrestleMania weekend, at least for the next year, that will truly be a big deal. Because with WWE going to Raw and SmackDown and NXT and all these shows taking place in Las Vegas that weekend, there's a lot of indie companies that will take advantage of that. GCW and so many others, they will come through and have some announcements and some shows and some big lineups to take advantage of the tourism. Now, next year, obviously, WrestleMania 43, WWE will be in Saudi Arabia. So that's obviously naturally how it's going to change. I really don't have a problem with it. I think this is a good thing for WWE. It just goes to show you how strong their business relationships are with these municipalities because WWE is now securing money to bring these shows to places. I think AEW has done a really good job with that too. WWE continues to do a really good job with that. They have made it to the point where cities desire the tourism that WWE brings. WrestleMania weekend is the biggest for that. These kind of announcements, even with WWE doing Backlash, it just kind of goes to show you that WWE will bring events wherever it is desired. And sometimes it does get kind of frustrating because, like being from Detroit, I would love to see WWE, bring more shows to Detroit or more PLEs to Detroit. I feel like they kind of sleep on us a little bit. But at the same time, too, it is what it is. And if Detroit wants a WWE PLE, they're going to have to fork over the money. And maybe Detroit's not willing to do that, right? So those are things that you just have to consider. You have to be cognizant of. But something like this is obviously a relatively big deal. This is how WWE operates at such a high level. Whether you like it or not, it doesn't really matter because WWE is still getting paid for this. And the truth is, WrestleMania weekend, it's a very, very tiresome weekend. There's a lot of stuff going on. So we'll see if there's a lot of fatigue this year. maybe it could result in less ticket sales, because the truth is, I've gone to WrestleMania weekends, and when you go to the Hall of Fame, and when you go to SmackDown, when you go to Raw, and when you go to NXT, and when you go to all these different things, the problem is you're spending so much money, but in addition to that, your whole weekend becomes just a weekend for pro wrestling. So that's not even factoring in the indie shows. And with WWE tickets the way they are, they really have to do something special, because that's where I think WWE will be impacted. They're charging so much for tickets. Are people really going to be willing to spend the money for those tickets, considering how much offerings there actually are that weekend? That's a very legitimate thing to talk about. But we'll see how WWE goes about it, and we'll see what they do. Obviously, they're successful for a reason, and maybe doing the Raw, SmackDown, NXT, Hall of Fame, all these things that they do on a weekend basis. Plus, they might be doing some stuff with Tony Hinchcliffe as well. Like, they're asking for a lot, and we'll see if that kind of bites them in the ass a little bit. But for now, it is what it is. All right, let's talk about a WWE return that is expected imminently. Shout out to PW Insider Elite for dropping today's news. Dominic Mysterio is set to return to WWE imminently. According to the report, he is expected back from his shoulder injury. Mike Johnson of PW Insider Elite did report that there was talk earlier today that the Judgment Day member was expected to be at tonight's episode of Monday Night Raw in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Now, also in addition to that, it is important to acknowledge that Dominic Mysterio is also set to return to AAA, and that is expected not this week, but the following week. He is expected to be on AAA on Fox. Obviously, Mysterio has been sidelined with a shoulder injury. The Judgment Day, we're starting to see them split up. I think that's what we're currently looking at, right? We got Raquel Rodriguez versus Stephanie Vaquer for the belt tonight. I think there's a very good chance that Raquel actually ends up winning the World Women's Championship tonight. Liv Morgan won the Royal Rumble. Finn Balor's got a storyline of his own. It looks like he's kind of tweening. He's like on a seesaw between being a babyface and a heel. And there seems to be what I have predicted for a while, the end of the Judgment Day, which should probably conclude at WrestleMania 42. Now, Dirty Dom has been out of action for a while. He's missed several weeks of live TV. He's missed live events. He hasn't really been doing anything for WWE. But it sounds like he has been physically cleared for a return. So he's the Intercontinental Champion. He, is also the AAA Mega Champion. You have to wonder if Dominic Mysterio and Finn Balor is a match for WrestleMania for the Intercontinental Championship. There's just so much to be considerate of how they're going to tell a story with him returning. But I do think tonight is the night that we get some explosive moment that will basically tell us what we need to know on the road to WrestleMania regarding the Judgment Day. And quite frankly, guys, the Judgment Day has been a very big hit for the WWE. It's a faction that has been very successful for the company, literally since the time that Rhea Ripley and Damian Priest took out Edge. When Edge got removed from the group, the Judgment Day really started to flourish. I feel like this is one of the big successes for Triple H under his booking. And if the idea is to get everybody out of the group into a role in which they can be successful without the group, then they have succeeded. And Raquel Rodriguez has improved tremendously. So if she goes on to beat Stephanie Vaquer for the World Championship, like, that's a very big deal. Liv Morgan winning the Royal Rumble, Liv versus Raquel versus Roxanne could very well be a triple threat match at WrestleMania, which, by the way, how do you get there? Roxanne Perez has to win the Women's Elimination Chamber. So I'm going to say it now. It is February 2nd, 2026. I believe that is the plan. One wild card is JD McDonough, who is still out with injury. And obviously, he's part of the group. We don't know exactly what the plan is for him. Does he go a singles route? Whatever it may be when he returns, I'm not sure. I really have no idea. But I do think WWE is trying to set Finn Balor up for that major babyface role. I think Dominic Mysterio down the line will be a major babyface for the company. I think Raquel and Roxanne and Liv are all going to succeed as single stars. So if that is the case, then the Judgment Day has really done its job, which is to get everybody going on their own. And, I'm not going to lie, I haven't always been supportive of the Judgment Day. I think there was times where maybe it was a little boring or maybe it was a little repetitive. But as time went on, WWE found a way to get the group on track. and through dynamic storytelling, they've been able to figure out a way to get people intrigued. And I think everybody's intrigued right now. I think Finn Balor has captured a lot of interest from fans. I think Dominic Mysterio returning tonight will continue to put more interest in him. You have to wonder if that babyface turn could be happening soon. I think for Raquel, like I said, we've seen her improvement. She really took Kevin Nash's advice seriously. And she's killing it in her role. And now it's like WWE has a lot of good stuff here. So I can't wait to see what they cook up, obviously, with Dominic returning to the show. And of course, if anything big happens along the way, I'll keep you guys updated. Speaking of returns, Brie Bella returned at the Royal Rumble. And I told you guys that was probably going to happen. I told you guys WWE was working on getting her back there. But the truth is, a lot of people are wondering, was it a one-time thing or is she back for good? Well, I got you guys. Well, the truth is, Brie Bella is back for good. It appears that she has signed a new deal with WWE, and her and Nikki Bella are expected to be a tag team in the women's division. I think that was actually kind of obvious too. If you watch the Women's Royal Rumble, it seemed like they were starting a new story between some of the women's tag teams, which I thought was a very good idea. Quite frankly, I've been pushing about this for months. You guys watch my channel on a daily basis. You know I have been talking about Brie Bella coming back and plans for Nikki and Brie to do tag team stuff. Nikki coming in earlier, man, that was a nice little, hey, you could do some single stuff, put over Stephanie Vakir, no big deal. But now this is where the real fun begins, because the women's tag team division, despite other content creators and internet people telling you, hey, it's dead, the WWE Women's Tag Team division actually has been doing quite a bit in the past year and a half, and now it's going to get better with Nikki and Brie. I actually want them to win the Women's Tag Team title belts. I'm going to be honest. I know it sounds crazy, but it's 2026. Give them the tag title belts. Give them the opportunity to run the Women's Tag Team division, and then when they're done, they're done. They're retired, and they're gone from WWE. But it was really important that Nikki and Brie fix their relationship with WWE. It was really important that WWE fix their relationship with Nikki and Brie as well. That relationship kind of got tarnished. It was kind of weird. The fact that they're back is great. I think they're going to be a great heel tag team, and I think they'll be great heel tag women's champions. However, on the contrary to that, this is where I have to be a little critical of WWE. Women's tag team wrestling has been pretty decent. There's definitely been a little bit more focus on it in the last year and a half, as I've said. But now this is the time where you have to start working on creating more tag teams and start getting a babyface tag team on the way up. Whether that's Rhea and Io, I don't know, because I think they're both destined to be single stars. But start looking at NXT, start looking at TNA, start looking at WWE Raw and SmackDown. Look at AAA. You have women on all of those shows. Think of what you can do with women's tag teams, because, hey, when WrestleMania comes around and Nikki and Brie walk out as women tag team champions, now you got to create a story where a babyface team chases them. And it's just simple mathematics in pro wrestling. And if you really want the women's tag team division to be somewhat special, then you have to start generating some interest in other tag teams. Kairi Sane and Asuka, Rhea and Io, it's simply not enough. You got to do a little bit more. I want to see WWE do a little bit more. Nikki and Brie opens up the doors for a little bit more to be done. And quite frankly, I think people will be happy. Now, I do also want to throw this out there. I think this part is very, very important. Brie Bella returning to WWE. Daniel Bryan, is that a possibility? Could we see Bryan Danielson leave AEW for WWE? I know it sounds crazy. I know some people will not believe me when I say this, but don't be shocked if it inevitably happens. I'm not saying in 2026. I'm not saying in 2027, but don't be shocked if we somehow, some way see Bryan Danielson return to WWE at some point. Whether it's as a wrestler, as a coach, as a booker, whatever it may be, I don't know, but I'm just saying I wouldn't be shocked. It would not be shocking at all. Speaking of AEW, we all thought that Chris Jericho was gone from the company. We were all under the belief that Chris Jericho would show up on the 1-year anniversary of Raw on Netflix. That didn't happen. So then we all assumed, we all speculated, okay, for sure, WWE is holding off on Chris Jericho's return. And, the reality is he didn't return at the Royal Rumble either. So what is really going on with Chris Jericho? What is his status? Let's talk about it. If you log into AEW's website, you'll actually see that Chris Jericho is still on the roster page. And Dave Meltzer and the Wrestling Observer is coming out and basically saying, hey, he's still technically under contract with AEW. But the thing is, nobody knows why. His contract was allegedly, reportedly, supposed to end at the end of 2025. People thought he would be free and clear by January 1st. And it's actually kind of been very interesting that all of a sudden nobody knows what's going on with his contract at all. Nobody knows. Did Tony Khan freeze his contract? Did Tony Khan freeze Chris Jericho's contract for missed time? Did he add time to the contract? Is there a chance that Chris Jericho secretly re-signed with AEW and there's been no reports about it? I don't know. I find it so funny and so interesting that when it comes to Chris Jericho's situation, nobody knows what's going on, but everybody's able to report on how much money Powerhouse Hobbs has been offered to join WWE and how much money he was offered to stay in AEW. And everybody knows every little detail about all this other stuff. But for some reason, when it comes to Chris Jericho and his status with AEW, nobody really knows what's going on. And if he's under contract with AEW and he's still not being utilized, then you have to wonder, why is AEW not utilizing him? You have to question these things because for some reason, the wrestling media can't seem to tell us what's going on here. But for everything else, they have all the little details that nobody's really asking for. And when it comes to the one story that everybody's asking for, it's crickets. Now, Chris Jericho clearly is a legend, and whatever he does end up doing, it's going to be good stuff. If it's AEW or WWE, it doesn't matter. If Chris Jericho is going to the WWE, I just want to know what is taking so long. Because if his contract ended in 2025 at the end of it, why do we not have any updates? Why is everything so quiet? Why is everything the way it is? And I don't simply understand it, and it is actually very infuriating. I will say this, though, if Tony Khan did re-sign Chris Jericho, that's not a bad thing at all either. I'm a fan of Chris Jericho. I'm not a fan of the learning tree. So if Chris Jericho does actually return to AEW, let's do something fun. Let's do something fresh. Let's do something cool, because the learning tree was not that. It was not any of those things. And I'm a fan of Chris Jericho. I got a lot of respect for Chris Jericho. And I will be the first to admit, though, the learning tree was not good, compelling TV. And if Chris Jericho is leaving AEW for WWE, and that is for sure, then again, I don't want to see anything like the learning tree. I don't care. I think Chris Jericho is one of the GOATs, okay? But you got to go away from what was not working and do something that is working. And I think there's a lot of things that WWE could do. I think Chris Jericho is a very interesting, character in itself, but I think his ability to adapt to different characters is very good. And it kind of makes me wonder if maybe Chris Jericho could be playing a role into the Bron Breakker elimination at the Royal Rumble, which is a very, very interesting conversation point, which is something I do want to talk about now. Who is the masked man that attacked Bron Breakker at the Royal Rumble? Because this is going to have to be one of the biggest storylines that WWE does going into WrestleMania season. Because, well, Bron Breakker not going into the Royal Rumble, not getting eliminations, not winning the Royal Rumble, it is being argued by fans all the time now. And so it's so funny because if you look at the images of the masked man, a lot of people think, hey, this kind of looks like Jake Paul. Now, Jake Paul publicly told the world about a month ago it had nothing to do with boxing, it had nothing to do with music, but something big is coming soon. And now that is leaving a lot of wrestling fans under the impression that Jake Paul could be involved in the WWE. And what if Jake Paul were to be part of the vision? What if Jake Paul were to make the jump to WWE? It is not a strange idea or concept at all. I think Jake Paul is somebody who is entirely, he's a charismatic dude. Jake Paul is a dude that gets, a lot of people talking. He's got a lot of hype. Whether you like Jake Paul or not, it doesn't really matter. The numbers are there. People are tuning in to his fights on Netflix. Even he loses against Anthony Joshua, and he's making so much money from it. Jake Paul is a draw. And Jake and Logan doing something in the WWE is not something that's been necessarily not talked about. Jake and Logan have talked about the possibility of it happening. Some people are wondering if it is Jake Paul. The facial structure, the body type, everything looks very similar. Do I think it is Jake Paul? No, I don't. But could it make sense? Yeah, it could, especially considering Logan Paul's in the vision. Could it have been Logan Paul himself? I think that is a very good concept. What about Austin Theory? What if Austin Theory was the one who took out Bron Breakker? See, I think what this is ultimately leading up to is that Austin Theory truly isn't part of the vision. I think Austin Theory is gaining intel on the vision and feeding it to Seth Rollins for his eventual return. And then whatever they do there is going to be with Seth and Austin and maybe somebody else. I think we're going to see a new faction emerge because of this. And that's why I'm so intrigued by the Masked Man storyline, which is also a reason why I don't want it to be Jake Paul or Logan Paul. I would actually be much happier if the Masked Man was Austin Theory. But if you look at the image, a close-up image, it did not look like Austin Theory, and it did not look like Austin Theory when he was originally under the mask to begin with. So this is something that is so cool to me because now WWE has a way to build up even more story for WrestleMania 42, and they need to. They need to go all out for WrestleMania 42. They need to really, really go in strong. And if you can do that with storylines that don't involve the World Championship, I think you will have managed to do a great job of that. Now, ultimately, whoever the Masked Man is, I think does play a very big role. But it is also important to acknowledge that WWE has to have a long-term play for Bron Breakker. So what is the long-term play for Bron Breakker? Well, my belief is that Bron Breakker will be a world champion in 2026, but it's not going to be because of the Elimination Chamber, and it's not going to be because of a singles match at WrestleMania. I think Bron Breakker is a guaranteed lock to win the WWE Money in the Bank later this year. And that is how I see it going down. Now, what would be really interesting, if we're just going to have fun for a minute, let's have fun for a minute. Who doesn't want to have fun when we fantasy book? What about the idea of Roman Reigns beating CM Punk at WrestleMania for the World Heavyweight Championship? Roman Reigns goes on for a, decently long run until Bron Breakker wins the Money in the Bank and cashes in successfully on Roman Reigns. If you want to create new stars, and WWE says, hey, we're in the business of creating new stars. If you want to create new stars, then what better way than to have Bron Breakker invade the island of relevancy and cash in Money in the Bank? I just think that right there has money on it. And then having a singles feud for the two of them could be really, really good. I think there's a lot of opportunity there. And I think WWE would be really smart if they pulled that off. Let's talk about AJ Styles. We saw him lose to Gunther at the Royal Rumble, and I came out on Twitter and I said, guys, I don't want to see him in AEW. And the world is mad at me because I said that. But quite frankly, guys, I don't even really want to see AJ Styles wrestle in TNA. The only match that I want to see in TNA with AJ Styles is Leon Slater. And the only match I want to see with AJ Styles in AEW would be Will Ospreay. Quite frankly, those two matches would be awesome, and it would be exciting, and it would be really cool to see AJ go on this world tour. But AJ told us he was retiring in 2026, and he said at the Royal Rumble his career is on the line. So Triple H publicly talks about this and says, hey, AJ told me he's done. He's not wrestling anymore. He put his career on the line. It's over. Then Peter Rosenberg comes out on social media and says he talked to AJ Styles, and AJ Styles is done and he's not wrestling. So if we're to listen to Peter Rosenberg and Triple H, it sounds like AJ Styles truly is done. If we were to listen to AJ Styles in his interviews where he talked about retiring in 2026, I would believe that he is done. But a lot of wrestling fans believe with the way it ended, AJ Styles is headed to AEW. Now, I don't think that's the case. I don't think AJ Styles is headed to AEW. And no, this is not an anti-AEW post. Get it in your thick skulls, my friends. Get it into your skull. Engrave it in your brain. I'm telling you right now, I genuinely do not believe that AJ Styles should be in AEW. But it has nothing to do with AEW as a company. It has nothing to do with TNA as a company. I have seen wrestlers talk about retirement so many times, and then they leave the company to go somewhere else. They're not going to tarnish AJ's legacy. AEW will not tarnish AJ's legacy. TNA will not tarnish AJ's legacy. But when a wrestler puts their career on the line and they lose, and they publicly talk in interviews saying that when they're done, they're done. If I see them show up in another company, I don't like that. I'm not a fan of that. Now, if I paid a ticket to watch AJ Styles' retirement match, and then a month later he shows up at an AEW pay-per-view, I'm going to feel like I got scammed out of my money. This is the same thing that happened with Adam Copeland. We thought he was done with WWE. We thought he was done with wrestling in general. Sure enough, he goes to AEW. Imagine paying money in Canada, watching watching Edge retire, and then in a short period later, he shows up in AEW. It's like, I don't like that concept. And by the way, AJ going to AEW, having a match with Will Ospreay or Kenny or this person, that person, it's cool, but a lot of those matches were already done before. AJ has wrestled a lot of people in the AEW roster. AJ has wrestled a lot of people in the TNA roster. The only reason why I would be okay somewhat of AJ going to TNA is because he's literally been on TNA TV teasing the idea of wrestling in TNA. And even that, there's really nothing I desire because of the fact that Leon Slater is the only match that I want to watch him have. Mike Santana versus AJ Styles doesn't blow the roof off for me. AJ Styles versus Kazarian doesn't necessarily blow the roof off for me. So, not mad if he does, but it just sounds like he's truly done with wrestling. And if AJ Styles is truly done with wrestling, then we can all expect him to go into a backstage role with WWE. He's publicly talked about that being his desire. And if that's the case, that's the case. And I'm okay with that. I am personally okay with that. He had a great career. Whether people want to admit it or not, AJ Styles had an amazing career in WWE. He had an amazing career in TNA. WCW fumbled AJ Styles. If I had a YouTube account back in the 1999, early 2000s when WCW was around, maybe I would have made a video about WCW fumbling AJ Styles. Who knows? But in all seriousness, he's had a great career, and he's a Hall of Famer for sure. And whatever happens, happens. But it just sounds like he truly is retired. And if he truly is retired, then that's good. That's fine. That's what it should be. And I'm hoping that is the case. But nonetheless, I will keep you guys updated along the way. So make sure you guys click subscribe.